Now, the US may reconsider aiding insurgent groups in Syria. That's after members from an Aleppo-based rebel group called Nur al-Din al-Zenki recorded themselves beheading a 10-year-old Palestinian child. RT's Caleb Maupin has been following the reaction of the US State Department to the incident.
The State Department was very quick to respond. Now, let's take a listen to what was said today.
We can prove that this was indeed what happened and this group was involved in it. I think it would certainly give us pause.
Will give you pause?
Will give us pause about any assistance or frankly, any further involvement with this group.
Now, the gruesome video that surfaced today is certainly not the first atrocity recorded by U.S.-backed Syrian rebels. Many other videos of rebels beheading people, torturing people, and violating human rights have surfaced over the course of the war. However, the United States continues to back these insurgent groups in the hope that they will topple the Syrian government. One of the other U.S.-backed Syrian rebel groups says that it is investigating what took place. But as of now, people around the world are very outraged by what was done by these rebels, backed and supported by the United States, and many questions about U.S. policy in Syria are being raised.
Now, let's get more on this story by speaking to Max Abrams, who's Professor of Public Policy at Northeastern University, and joins us on the line. Welcome again, Max. Always good to speak to you. The Nur al-Din al-Zenki group, get that right, they're not the only ones, are they? There's quite a number of so-called moderate factions that have been involved in the killing of Syrian civilians. Why wouldn't the US reconsider its relationship with them?
Well, that's a great idea. I think that the US will be forced to reconsider after the release of this video. This is a really gruesome video, which in a way I wouldn't encourage people to see because it's disgusting, but it's important in terms of providing insight into the nature of these so-called moderate rebel groups. What appears to be happening in the video is a group of men have taken a young Palestinian boy who is not in good shape at all. He's emaciated. He's not fully with it. It looks like he may have been tortured, and they very deliberately and enthusiastically even proceed to saw off his head with a small knife. Now, if this sort of incident were to happen in the West, there's no question what we would call it. We would call it terrorism. But when it happens in Syria, for whatever reason, we look at it very differently. Not only do we not condemn it, but many countries actively support these groups by providing them money and weapons, anti-tank weapons. And so this very group has been supported by the United States, by Turkey, by Saudi Arabia. And it's just, as you're right, this is just one of many groups just like this. Amnesty International, which is a respected organization, evaluated the Syrian rebel groups recently. Not the most extreme ones, but what are often considered to be among the more moderate ones, like Ahrar al-Sham. And it concluded that these groups are guilty of war crimes. They torture, they abduct people, and their goal really is to put in place a very, very strict version of Sharia law that it's very hard to tell the difference between their political preferences and those of al-Qaeda.
It seems very inconsistent if you think that when you think of people like President Assad or even Gaddafi in Libya, the US has been willing to take military action against people it considered as using violence against the civilians. And yet here it seems that they're willing to work with a group that enacts similar violent principles. And it's not a one-off. Amnesty International have said that this group, Nur al-Din al-Zenki, abducted, tortured journalists and others in 2014, 2015. Is the US not monitoring the rebel groups that it's supporting?
I think that that's part of it. I think that all of the countries that support these rebel groups, they're not very cautious at all about where the money and the weapons are going. Some of the funding and weapons have ended up in the hands of Islamic State. The United States tries to be more selective than, say, Saudi Arabia, but in my opinion, we're still not selective enough. And, you know, I think that the US really hoped that we could replace Assad with moderate rebels. And for years now, since the uprising, the US has searched in vain for this moderate rebel force, which, you know, we really hoped that it would replace the Assad regime, who does mistreat the population, and that it would be able to take on groups, especially like the Islamic State. But the reality is that all evidence indicates that from the beginning, or very close to the beginning, the rebel groups there are anything but moderate. And today's video is just the latest display of the kinds of people that would replace the Assad regime if he were to be toppled. And so for this very reason, because the alternative is so bad, I have been advocating against regime change from the start, because again, his replacement is not moderate rebels. It's the kind of people who chop off little kids' heads, and anywhere outside of Syria would be called a terrorist.
Do you think this video, if it's confirmed as being genuine, will be a turning point? And presumably, if it gets enough air coverage in the media, it'll get a lot of public support. Do you think this will change US relationships with other rebel groups?
Honestly, not that much. Before this interview, I Googled around to see what was written about this incident, and precious few media outlets have picked up on this story. This is not a large story. I don't expect it to be running, for example, on CNN. I saw an article about it in the Los Angeles Times, but most Americans don't follow Syria, you know, at this close of a level, and so they won't know. However, I don't think that the incident is completely insignificant. There's a growing tendency for the United States, including at the level of the US President and the Secretary of State, to be more pro-Assad, to stress less the desire for regime change, to talk more about working with the Russians so that together we could take on Islamic State and the Al-Qaeda affiliate Nusra. And so this incident is part of that momentum. And so in that sense, I think it could actually have a positive effect in terms of the US position on Syria.
Max, good to speak to you. Max Abrams, our guest, Professor of Public Policy at Northeastern University there.